The sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows across the dirt path that led to Camp Evergreen. I arrived with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, my heart a blend of anticipation and anxiety. The camp, nestled among towering pines and age-old oaks, held an air of serene isolation, a stark contrast to the bustling city life I was eager to escape for the summer. My role as a camp counselor was a first, a chance to break from my routine, immerse myself in nature, and admittedly, pad my college applications. The campgrounds were sprawling, dotted with rustic cabins that had seen better days, a central mess hall with its weathered wooden planks, and a crystal clear lake that mirrored the sky. It was picturesque, tranquil, and unsettlingly silent, save for the occasional chirp of a distant bird or the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. I was greeted by Jake, the camp director, a man whose rugged appearance seemed carved from the woods around us. His firm handshake and gruff, welcoming smile set me at ease. "You're going to love it here," he assured, leading me to meet the other counselors, a diverse group of college students like myself, each with their own reasons for spending the summer in seclusion. As the days passed, we fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings were spent leading activities for the kids, afternoons exploring the vast wilderness, and evenings around the campfire, sharing stories and laughs under the starlit sky. The camaraderie was instantaneous, a bond forged from shared experiences and the unique thrill of newfound independence. However, it wasn't long before the serenity of our secluded haven was pierced by odd occurrences. It began with strange noises at night, sounds that didn't belong to any animal I knew, a chilling symphony of howls and screeches that seemed too orchestrated to be mere acts of nature. Then came the discovery of deep scratch marks on the trees near the outer cabins, as if marked by claws not meant for this world. Despite our attempts to rationalize these mysteries, unease crept into our nightly gatherings. Conversations were hushed, eyes darted to the shadowy fringes of the firelight, and the unspoken question hung heavily in the air. What lurks within the woods of Camp Evergreen? Days turned into weeks, and the initial thrill of adventure gave way to a gnawing apprehension. The strange noises persisted, now accompanied by an eerie silence that seemed to fall over the camp as night approached. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, anticipating something ominous. This change was subtle at first, noticed only by those of us who spent our nights staring into the fire, minds racing with the possibilities of what lay beyond the ring of light. One evening, while sitting at the edge of the lake, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. A thick fog rolled in from the woods, creeping over the water's surface with an unnatural speed. Within it, I could make out shapes, forms that moved with purpose, yet seemed formless, like shadows given life. My calls to the others were lost in a sudden gust of wind that swept the fog away as quickly as it had appeared. When I recounted what I saw, my words were met with skepticism, chalked up to an overactive imagination fueled by the campfire tales. The camp's atmosphere shifted. Laughter became less frequent, replaced by whispered theories and speculative glances towards the tree line. The counselors started moving in pairs, especially after sunset, an unspoken pact to safeguard against the unknown. Our duties with the campers remained unchanged, but there was a newfound urgency in our actions, a desire to keep them safe from whatever was unsettling the wilderness around us. Then the disappearances began. A camper, no more than 10 years old, vanished from his bunk one night. A thorough search of the campgrounds yielded nothing but a set of drag marks leading into the forest, abruptly ending at the base of an ancient oak. The local authorities were called, their investigation turning the camp upside down, yet no trace of the boy was found. The incident sent shockwaves through Camp Evergreen. Parents arrived in droves, fear and anger etched on their faces as they gathered their children, whispers of negligence and danger filling the air. The camp was to be shut down, its remaining days canceled as the investigation continued. Yet, for those of us who remained, counselors and a handful of staff, there was an unspoken agreement. We needed answers, not just for the sake of the missing boy, but for our own peace of mind. As the camp emptied, a solemn determination took hold among us. We began our own forays into the woods, searching for any clue that could explain the bizarre occurrences and the disappearance. It was during one such expedition that we found the first of the markers, an ancient symbol carved into the bark of a tree, hidden deep within the forest. Its meaning was unknown to us, but its presence was a clear indication that we were dealing with something beyond our understanding. The nights grew longer, the atmosphere more oppressive. The sounds from the woods intensified, now clearly audible as cries of anguish and terror, a cacophony of despair that left us sleepless and on edge. We were no longer just counselors at a summer camp. We had become guardians of a mystery that threatened to engulf us entirely. As the summer waned, the boundary between the camp and the wilderness blurred, the forest seemingly encroaching upon us with each passing day. The air was thick with a palpable dread, and the remaining counselors and I found ourselves caught in a waking nightmare, our daily routines overshadowed by the looming threat from the woods. The camp, once a place of laughter and light, had transformed into a fortress of sorts, our efforts focused on fortifying the cabins and central areas against whatever roamed the forest at night. Yet, despite our precautions, the entity, or entities, that haunted us remained elusive, its intentions as mysterious as the disconcerting signs it left behind. Our resolve was tested further when another counselor went missing. Sarah, a vibrant soul with an infectious laugh, had ventured too close to the forest edge at dusk, drawn by the same inexplicable curiosity that had plagued us all summer. Her disappearance was marked by the same chilling evidence, a trail of disturbed earth, leading into the heart of the darkness beyond. This loss hit us hard, the reality of our situation sinking in with a weight that threatened to crush our spirits. In the face of our dwindling numbers, we convened under the dim light of the mess hall, the map of the camp laid out before us. We traced the locations of the strange occurrences, the disappearances, and the unexplained marks on the trees, searching for a pattern, a clue to the nature of our unseen adversary. It was then that we realized the incidents formed a perimeter, a deliberate encircling of the camp that seemed to tighten with each passing day. Armed with this knowledge, we decided to take a more aggressive stance. If we were indeed being hunted, then we would no longer be passive prey. We organized into search parties, each equipped with flashlights, walkie-talkies, and whatever makeshift weapons we could muster. Our plan was to probe the edges of the forest, to confront the unknown with a show of force, and, hopefully, to reclaim a measure of control over our fates. The forest, however, had other plans. No sooner had we stepped beyond the camp's boundaries than the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive. The usual sounds of the night were absent, replaced by a low, mocking laughter that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was as if the forest itself was alive, aware of our intentions, and amused by our bravado. Our search yielded more questions than answers. We found traces of passage, broken branches, footprints that were neither human nor animal, and more of the strange symbols carved into the trees. Each discovery served only to deepen the mystery, providing no insight into the nature of our foe. As we retreated to the safety of the camp, a sense of futility enveloped us. The forest had revealed its hostility in no uncertain terms, and we were left to ponder our next move, aware that time was running out. The final days of summer brought a sense of urgency to Camp Evergreen. The woods around us had transformed from a place of mystery to one of outright hostility, the unknown creature making its presence felt with increasing boldness. Our nights were plagued by vivid nightmares, each of us waking to the echoes of screams, unsure if they had been dreamed or if they had shattered the eerie silence of the pre-dawn hours. It was during one of these restless nights that the creature finally revealed itself. A grotesque amalgamation of shadows and despair, it moved with a grace that belied its monstrous form. Its eyes, if they could be called that, burned with a malevolent intelligence, and its body was covered in scales that seemed to absorb the light around it. The creature was both there and not, a flicker in the periphery of our vision that chilled the blood and paralyzed the heart. The realization of what we faced, a being not of this world, or perhaps not of this realm, cemented our resolve. We understood then that the camp could not be saved, that our only hope lay in escape. As dawn broke, casting a weak light over the besieged camp, We gathered the few belongings we could carry and prepared to leave Camp Evergreen behind forever. Our departure was marked by a heavy silence, each step away from the camp a mixture of relief and sorrow. We left behind a place haunted not just by a malevolent creature, but by the memories of those we had lost, swallowed by the unfathomable depths of the forest. The journey away from Camp Evergreen was fraught with tension, each rustle in the underbrush a potential herald of our doom. Yet the forest remained still, as if the creature had achieved its aim and now watched with indifferent eyes as we fled its domain. The further we traveled, the more the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a tentative hope. Perhaps it was content to reign over its conquered territory, or perhaps it recognized that our spirits had been irrevocably broken, our will to resist extinguished. In the weeks that followed, the story of Camp Evergreen faded from the public eye, chalked up to a tragic mystery that would likely never be solved. But for those of us who survived, the memories remained, etched into our very souls. We went our separate ways, bound by a shared experience that we could scarcely believe ourselves, let alone explain to others. Yet, in the silent moments before sleep claimed us, in the shadows that danced at the edge of our vision, we knew the truth. The creature of the woods was real, as was the evil it embodied. We had glimpsed a darkness beyond our understanding, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknowable.